Well, everybody, we are here today with country music star, and man, he's a hit-making machine. He's got a latest record out, Never Gets Old, Mr. Joe Nichols. Joe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. You?
I'm doing great, and I've been looking forward to asking you a few questions. And before I forget, I just want to go ahead and hit on this because a few months ago, when you're on YouTube, you sometimes get those suggestions for music. Well, Choices was suggested that I listen to it, so I clicked on it, and I listened to it. I wore that thing in the ground. Your version of that. Man. So tell us about the traditional country series of songs that you've recorded, how that started, and all that good stuff.
Well, it kind of went along with this last album we did. I think my manager George Corey kind of wanted to capitalize on something I'm really passionate about, and that is traditional country music, the classics.
Oh yeah.
That probably are a little, lost on today's, country fan base a little bit. And so kind of wanted to highlight my favorites, my favorite singers, my favorite song by those singers, and kind of want to do like a little series, like every month drop a new song. And it was just, like I said, it was just something that went along with the theme of the album, which was, never gets old. These songs never get old.
Oh,
and that was something I was really into, not just because it was, like I said, it's a side project to go along with the theme of the record, but I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do an album full of my favorite covers, and this is finally a chance to kind of do some of those.
Well, let me ask you this, man. Do you think country radio or country fans, let me say fans, are they ready for that to circle back around that traditional sound that so many of us just are passionate about?
Yeah, I think the country fan base has always been ready for it.
Right.
I think more than the type of style being more successful now than before,
right,
say in the last 5 or 10 years, I think it's the authenticity, the people are wanting to buy good records again, and that leaves the door more open for a good traditional country record versus, like I said, 5 or 10 years ago, where people were just kind of closed-minded a little bit on this type of style versus what's popular.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it goes back to people nowadays are watching the Grammys and digging Casey Musgraves and Chris Stapleton's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
That's just good music.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's traditional or not,
right,
is I think it's a byproduct. Really, success of the style of music is more, like I said, people are open to it rather than the last 5 or 10 years, dictated by a lot of radio success. A lot of there's a lot of songs that have been played over the past 5 or 6, 10 years that are what I like to call a little bit of wallpaper. Mm-hmm. Which you can walk into a grocery store and it'll be playing. You don't really know what's playing,
right,
but it sounds familiar, and the song sounds the same as the last song, and you go about your shopping day. And it just kind of blends into the wall.
Yeah.
Where I think nowadays, people are being a little more open to the Sturgill Simpsons and the Casey Musgraves, Chris Stapletons.
Yeah.
Where it actually sticks out, and you're like, whoa, that's a good record. And I don't care if you're a traditional guy or a progressive sound. That's a good record.
Yeah, that's so. I'm so glad you painted that picture about the wallpaper and being in the grocery store. That's a perfect example. It really is. Well, that brings me to this, man. In the '90s, and a lot of my guests, Joe, are artists that I grew up on in the '90s, and I'm sure you know a lot of these guys. But I had Billy Dean on the show, and he was talking about in the '90s the songs were so good that they told stories. There was meat on the bone. Is that not true?
It's absolutely true, and I think you can look at the explosion of country from 1989 on through the 90s.
Yeah,
and look at the number one thing is the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Not only was country becoming popular because of dance clubs and things like that, but like Billy Dean would say, and you say that the songs were so much better. They were catchy, but they had stories.
Yeah.
And whether it was a 2.5 minute story that was about something, significant or insignificant, it was still a story, and it you bought into the artist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Whether Tracy Lawrence, you bought into Tracy Lawrence overall, the artist, versus nowadays, the comparison nowadays is I think people are one song out. I buy into one song. I buy into the single.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know about the guy or the girl, the bigger picture. And I think, the 90s are a wonderful example of the genre, like I said, exploding because people were bought into the entire scope of the artist. And that's based on good songs, man.
Yeah.
Great song, back to back to back, give you a picture of who the artist is. And there was more of a complete picture, more of a complete artist back then. I will say that, yeah. And I grew up on country music, in the 90s as well. And, my success came after 2002, and I'm more of a, Y2K guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that sticks out to me that we have less of is, like you said, meat on the bones and the songs, and the lack of connection with the listener and the artist as far as, I like this guy or this girl's catalog.
Right.
Everything they do, I like, so I buy into the artist. Nowadays, everybody's just trying to get played on the radio, and you kind of lose a little bit of the connection, a little bit of the depth of the artist,
sure,
because we're all fighting for that, one of 20 spots.
Man, I remember when I was 12 and 13, and I remember how excited I was to actually go buy a Diamond Rio tape or or Little Texas tape, but that's you're saying. But I bought into the artist. I did. I invested into those artists, and not only that, but I would buy their next record. You know what I mean? So it's just that's perfect.
It was definitely. I think it was definitely harder for an artist to come and go than it is now. I think you can have a hit record now, and people will forget who you are next year.
Right.
It's definitely a what have you done for me lately kind of environment that we have. And this wasn't the case back then. And like you said, you bought the album, and that was an event.
Yeah.
That was something that you went, to the record store and bought a CD or a tape, and you're like, I can't wait to listen front to back. I can't wait to look at the liners, the song lyrics, the pictures. It was kind of, like I said, more of an event. And nowadays it's, I like this song, I Shazammed it, or Spotify playlist or whatever, and I'll connect and buy that song and get in and get out.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's the difference between now and 20 years ago.
Right. And it's and plus, Joe, man, I used to, even when I was a teenager, music videos were so big, and that caused me to want to buy a song too. And it's and I still remember certain videos. That's how they stick in my mind. So it's that's crazy.
I do think that videos have been replaced in a significant way by the social media interaction. The Instagram or the YouTube posts, because I think what videos did back then is they gave you a glimpse of their life, or a visual picture of this artist. What they look like, kind of their interaction, their facial expressions, any kind of human element. There was beyond the music that was captured by video most of the time.
Right.
And nowadays you get a lot of that from a 30-second Instagram video. Video from somebody's front porch or somebody's tour bus or something like that. So I think one does serve the same purpose as the other. I just think it's a different kind of medium nowadays.
Right. Yeah. Who name a couple artists that stick out to you, Joe, from the 90s that you were digging back then?
Man, I've always been, since I was a little kid, a big George Strait fan. Love, straight country, straight from the heart. One of my top two. Those are two of my top 10 favorite albums of all time.
Oh wow!
And so I think George Strait, Tracy Lawrence stuck out to me, in that class. So, and when pure country came along, I was already a huge George Strait fan. But I remember the craze that came along. It was like 92 or 93 that came along with that movie. It just catapulted him into a different level. But those are some of the guys that I liked of that era. Randy Travis. Of
course.
That was a lot of time spent on learning those songs and digging into the album cuts. So that's a few of those guys, and I've always been drawn to the older stuff. Going back further, the Merle Haggard records. The Don Williams, the Ronnie Millsap, Keith Whitley. You know, cried like a baby when I learned he died. It was around Mother's Day, 1989. I was fairly young, and I was building my mother a sidewalk out of gravel. And I remember we were listening to the radio station, country radio station there in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And they announced that Keith Whitley died. And man, like I said, I cried like a baby on the sidewalk. But and that's, like I said, that's kind of my taste. I like to go back and dig those baritone, old classic kind of traditional country singers.
Yeah. And did you ever find yourself as a teenager, man, when you knew this is something you wanted to do, trying to emulate certain voices?
Oh, dude, I spent thousands of hours in my bedroom, you know, listening to a tape front to back, trying to sing just like Randy Travis or George Strait. Just many, many, many hours. And, you know, I look back on those and say that molded my voice to what it is today. I don't know what I would sound like if I didn't have those guys teaching me their drawl or their, you know, this type of regional accent.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, those kind of molded me, you know, over the years, just studying how well they did things, stuff that made me feel something. I wanted to, like you said, emulate.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of see how I stacked up.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned to sing harmony by listening to Marty Rowe and Diamond Rio.
Yeah. Oh man, great band. It's still great.
Oh,
we do shows with them from time to time, and they're still an amazing watch.
Dana Williams was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he's hilarious.
Yeah, those guys are all pretty great witted.
Let me ask you this: Darren Knight, one of my, I can watch him anytime and just I can't quit laughing. Tell me about how that came about, and not tell the fans, you know, that he recorded with you, and I'm fascinated to hear this story.
Gosh, I don't know how the idea came up. I know that I've watched these YouTube videos and just I don't know, I laugh like an idiot sometimes at his stuff. You know, it's just kind of off the cuff humor is pretty great,
and it's so true.
It's great. I mean, he captures that.
Yeah.
Amazing. If you weren't watching the video while listening to this guy's voice, you'd think that was, you know, that's a real character. That's a real woman. But he's a great sense of humor. I thought, since we were kind of making something totally silly and obvious, kind of poking fun at ourselves, I know that Mickey Jack Cones and a couple others thought that guy would be great to at least ask to, you know, be a part of that, and see if you can come up with something really clever and throw it on there for 20 seconds. And that's kind of how that came up. On Baby Got Back.
Baby Got Back. Yes, people, if you didn't know that, Joe recorded Baby Got Back. That's awesome.
You mentioned YouTube suggestions on songs. I kind of learned my lesson about watching comments when it comes to stuff like Baby Got Back, because, you know, there's 20 great comments of people that get it, and they get kind of why we did it, the humor in it. Like I say, we got to laugh at ourselves. But there's that one person after 20 or 25 comments that just wrecks you. It goes, you know, for the jugular, like, this is why country music is dead. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke, man. We're just laughing. It's silly. We're not meaning to make a statement out here with Baby Got Back. Just kidding.
It's not like you're releasing a single to Billboard with it.
Yeah, it's not meant to go any further than this will make you laugh for 20 seconds, hopefully.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. So tell me this. Is there a difference between the Joe Nichols of early 2000s and the way you approached things back then, whether it's the business or even your own shows and your say and what you had input on, and the Joe Nichols of 2019?
You know, it's so funny. The more I learn, the softer my opinions are. I think when I started out, I had such firm opinions and such a firm grasp on, this is exactly what I want out of a live show. Yeah. And this is exactly what I want out of a record. And nowadays, after kind of learning more about myself, learning more about, you know, my fans and the country fan base as a whole, I think my opinions matter less to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm more open to hearing, you know, something that works and something that doesn't. The one thing I think that I've held on to for years, over the past 17 years, I guess, is that I like good music. I like it when it's good and when it feels right to me. Whether or not it's successful is kind of an afterthought. What matters most is that I'm proud of it and that I'm comfortable sharing it with other people. And it's not from an insecurity place. That's coming from I guess I don't want to do anything that isn't worth everybody's time.
Yeah.
And back in those days, I think when I started off, I just wanted to be good. And it was almost like a competition with everybody that was my contemporary, previous artists and new artists. I wanted to be better than them live. I wanted to be, I don't want to be too cool for school. I didn't want to be commercial enough where people were like, it's a fad.
Right.
I wanted to be, too cool for school. And a lot of times my show became boring because I wanted to oversing everything or play 7 or 10 songs in the show that most people wouldn't get. And they kind of brought the show to a screeching halt because there was 7 ballads that nobody had ever heard before, but I sang them good, and I want everybody to hear how country I am.
Yeah.
And that I can do this, and the next guy can't. I don't think like that anymore. It's not a competition with other people anymore. It's about, man, what I think is quality to me and what connects with other people. That's kind of why I do this. It's like I said, it's a connection. What makes you feel something?
Yeah.
What makes me feel something? Delivering it.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Well, Joe, as we wrap up, we do something with our artists, and it's called Rapid Fire. So we'll call this Rapid Fire with Joe Nichols. I'll either give a statement or a short answer question. It's all in fun, and you just shoot off whatever you think of first. That sound fun?
Sounds fun. Yeah.
All right, so here we go. Favorite concert you've ever been to as a fan?
Oh, favorite concert I've ever been to as a fan. Golly.
I know some of these are tough.
As a kid, man, my first concert that I remember well was George Strait and Patty Loveless. And I'll never get that one out of my head. It was pretty great.
Town. Patty opened up for George.
Yeah, man. It's a great, great tour.
And I was about to ask you who your favorite female artist of the 90s was.
Patty Loveless.
Yeah. I kid you not, that's mine too, man. I used to have the biggest crush on her when I was in high school. And man, she was a hit maker in the 90s.
Absolutely. Yeah. And deservedly so, man. Great talent. Just, man, great country singer.
Favorite venue you've ever played?
Well, I think Red Rocks in Denver is pretty cool.
Oh, shoot, man. That is awesome.
A couple times I've played there have been really, really cool. I love Billy Bob's. Every time I play at Billy Bob's, I have a good time.
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
And so many of your contemporaries record live albums there.
Yeah, that's the place to do it, man. Yeah. Just the history, the vibe, everything. Yeah.
Wow. When you first arrived on the scene, maybe even right when you got into Nashville, who was the one person that you really wanted to meet? Or I guess what was your first starstruck moment?
Meeting Merle Haggard for the first time.
Yeah,
that was
man.
Him and Buck Owens.
Oh, wow.
Were 2 moments that I was like, wow, this is really cool. First time I met George Jones, believe it or not, was at Buck Owens' place there in Bakersfield at Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Buck Owens was having this, he unveiled the 10 bronze statues. And it was the 10 icons of country music. And George Jones was one. He was there. Garth Brooks was another. He was there when he proposed to Trisha Yearwood.
Oh, wow.
And Merle Haggard and Buck Owens and Willie Nelson. It was a really cool night. And they invited me to play and play a couple of these songs by these artists while they were there, which is really intimidating.
Wow, I bet it was. What?
Scared to death.
Yeah.
But I met Merle Haggard, and he was familiar with me, and that made me feel like $1 million. Like, this is crazy. You're one of my all-time, favorites, hero of mine, and you know my name.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with my music. That's crazy. That's amazing. So that was a really big moment for me.
Speaking of that, this was on a side note. I was listening to an interview. It's probably been 2 years ago with Garth, and the person asking the interview said, "Now, who do you like right now on today's country radio?" And he said Joe Nichols. Yeah, I forget who was interviewing him, but it was on TV.
Wow, well, that's really cool, man. He's been really good to me over the years. I've heard him say that a few times in a few interviews, going way back to 2005 when Tequila was out there, and
wow.
It's really cool to have somebody like Garth,
yeah,
the the enormity of his status in country music and among the fans to kind of give me a shout out. Like, I like this guy. People immediately go, all right, I'll check him out. That's really cool.
And last one, man, favorite hit song to play live? Or do you have one?
Ooh, man. Does it change? For different reasons.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, Tequila Makes Your Clothes Fall Off, gets an immediate reaction
from
the crowd, and it's always fun.
Uh-huh.
I think Sunny in 75 goes over great live. The energy is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
People are moving, they're bouncing. It's crazy. But I go back always to Broken Heartsville. Just such a fun song for me to sing because it's been with me for 17 years now. That was a hit, I guess, in 2003, so 16 years. And it I don't know, man. Every night I feel like, all right, this is my wheelhouse. This is my home base.
Yeah. And do people still come up to you with stories about the impossible?
Oh yes.
Yeah, I figured so.
One of the coolest things about what I do, what we do, is the like I've said before, the connection with fans.
Mm-hmm.
And that song, along with "I'll Wait for You," have given me some great moments over the years from fans sharing their experience, their stories about that.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, man, thanks so much for calling into the show.
Yeah, man. That's my pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see each other on the road one day, and I'll tell you who I am.
Sounds good, man.
All right, buddy. You have a good one.
You too, man.
Bye-bye.
Take care.